In the name of the Holy and Undivided Trinity, one God. Please be seated. Well, this is a big day in the life of Calvary Church. Any Sunday could be a big Sunday, but this day is particularly full. We have had our annual meeting where we talk about everything that happened in the last year and look at where we might be headed over the next 12 months. We are baptizing Aubrey Hadley Allen, that's you, who many of you will recognize from her recent appearance on our stage as Baby Jesus. And these things are all taking place in the context of our celebration of the feast of the presentation of Jesus in the temple. This feast comes around every February 2nd, but we don't always get to celebrate it on a Sunday. It doesn't always hit on a Sunday. So we've got a lot going on today, and we might be tempted into thinking that this is the proper amount of activity for this feast day, as if this is the time and the way we should celebrate this particular happening of Jesus coming into the temple. But to be honest, I imagine that scene in the temple in Jerusalem on the day when Mary and Joseph brought the baby in to be dedicated to God was probably more like an ordinary Tuesday than like Super Bowl Sunday. Now, the Holy Family had taken the trip all the way to downtown Jerusalem for two reasons. The first was to present Jesus in the temple because he was their firstborn son. And that's what God said and the law said you should do. And if we know anything about Mary and Joseph, we know that they are followers, they are rule followers. When God says do this, they do this. But they are also there for a second requirement. The rules of the temple required that Mary be ritually cleansed after giving birth. Now, the idea that a woman is somehow ritually unclean after giving birth strikes me as fairly outdated and a bit paternalistic. It may strike you the same way. But this tradition, which calls for a mother to return to her place of worship 40 days after she has given birth, is something that has persisted in the church. Up until the current edition of the prayer book, there was a service that was commonly called the Churching of Women. Now, that service was replaced in 1979 with one that's called Thanksgiving for the Birth or Adoption of a Child. And I think that is more fitting with our understanding of how God celebrates new life in our midst. But there's one element that remains, and it's one that I think is more fitting, and it's in this prayer that starts with the words, "O gracious God, we give you humble and hearty thanks that you have preserved through the pain and anxiety of childbirth your servant, who desires now to offer you her praise and thanksgivings." And I appreciate how that prayer gets at something that our culture tends to sentimentalize. Our culture loves to talk about babies and birth, but we often overlook the fact that pregnancy is a high endurance sport. There was a study that was published last June, a study of just how long a human can go, how much energy they can produce. And they studied 4 different groups of people. They studied elite cyclists, those people who ride the Tour de France and other major tours like that, spend a whole season doing that. They studied Arctic trekkers, people who would ski across the tundra. They studied, I didn't even know this was a thing, they studied transcontinental runners. And they studied women who are pregnant and nursing. And so Mary has come to the temple on this day like a person who has run a marathon every day for 6 days each week, all the way from Huntington Beach, California to Washington, D.C. She's there, she's ready for her balloon arch. She's ready for the cheering crowds. She's ready for slices of orange, maybe. What she gets instead is this older man named Simeon, who seems to have just wandered into the temple on that day. And he picks up her baby and he's carrying him around. Now, some of that makes sense because passing around the baby is the national sport of church dinners, of course. We will do a ritual version of that activity here in just a minute. And part of why I think our arms are so drawn to children is because we see in them, at all of our family picnics, we see in them the same love and the same gratitude that was kindled in Simeon when he saw the baby Jesus. There's a gratitude in simply knowing that we were all born. That we were born beloved children not only of our parents, but of God. The author of the letter to the Hebrews not only affirms that we are God's children, but that we share in this experience of being born, of being flesh and blood with each other. So that we are siblings of one another. Just like the 12 children of Abraham were siblings to one another in one family, we are bound together as one human family. Just like God came to set the family of the Hebrews free, the scripture says that Christ has become like his brothers and sisters in every respect. He has become like his brothers and sisters in every respect so that the human family can be set free. And Simeon sees all of this when he is holding the baby Jesus and looking into his eyes. But Simeon's not the only one milling around the temple that morning. For the prophet Anna, I wonder if this ordinary Tuesday morning didn't start out like so many others for her. Waking up in the temple. She lives there. And she's waking up there kind of like Bill Murray's character in the movie Groundhog Day. Waking up to Sonny and Cher on the radio again. Anna has been at it for a long time. And I wonder if what kept her going is not that she has continued to find a place within that community. The fact that she is there constantly worshiping and praying and fasting not only gives her dignified work, but it has gained for her the respect of everyone who has come and gathered, and all of these people that are holding out hope that God will do something to bring Jerusalem out from the oppression of the Roman Empire. And so through all that time, Anna has managed not to get bitter, not to get jaded. She has managed to be able to perceive the hope that Jesus brings. That this child who sees a family of faith tottering on the brink of despair looks at them, and this child who almost brings forth a song, "I got you, babe." That song reverberates down through the ages. As Christ's body in the world, what we are promising to Aubrey is what we have promised to each other. I got you, babe. You have arrived, and we have arrived. And this is your balloon arch. And we had breakfast casserole instead of orange slices. I hope that's okay. But for a moment, we'll join with Simeon and with Anna in celebrating your arrival. But this is not where we are going to stay. Before long, we'll go back out into the world, into our own towns, where Simeon has already warned us that you are going to break our hearts. But you'll also open up our minds. We'll do this because we know that parenting is not for the faint of heart. That's why we invite sponsors and godparents, what in Spanish are called comadres and compadres. These fathers and mothers who come alongside to walk with the parents of a child being baptized. And in fact, this whole community, this whole part of the human family promises today to share in caring and nurturing, not for this, only for this child, but for each other. And we don't do this because we think we're perfect. We do this because we know that we are not. The letter to the Hebrews says that because Jesus himself was tempted, and that by that testing he suffered, because of that he is able to help us who are being tested. He's been down that road that he is calling us to travel. Some of us, like Anna and Simeon, have been down that road a little farther. Others, like Mary and like Joseph, are just getting started. And all of those people gathered in the temple, and all of us gathered here at Calvary Church, as we come around this child who brings hope into our midst, we are only beginning to see what God has in store for us. Thanks be to God.